This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Zedi, Ama harachta yomim. We thought the day would never come. How are you zeicha to live so long? Your life defied all logic. Eichmann, selection lines, crematoria. You're pulled out at the last moment. Smuggling tefillin into death camps, with a gun at your head, nisim v'neflois every step of the way. In your 80s, the joke was you had the non-retirement dinner. At 85, you pledged never to retire. And then in your 90s, you would go every morning to the kollel for davening, for daf hayomi, returning home 3 hours after you left. Zaidi, you said the hardest part about turning 90 was reading the Rashi Oisios in the Gemara. You could be at any shir, at any blot in Shas, and say along with the Maggid shir as if you learned the blot yesterday. Who could ever forget, Zaidi, when you were Oile L'Torah at 98 years old? Kol mi shaloira Harav Mordechai Leib Glatstein Oile L'Torah Ben Meyo Shana Loira Kavod HaTorah Miyamav. You would think the man running to be Oile L'Torah was 30 years old, 20 years old, with such gevura, with such zrizus, with such avas HaTorah. We all say we're the Am HaNivchar, we're the chosen people. Whoever never heard Harav Mordechai Leib Glatstein say the words, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim, doesn't know what it means that we are the Am HaNivchar. You pen the words, Ani hagever ra ani b'shevet avrasai, in reference to seeing the Warsaw Ghetto, thousands of skeletons, littered with corpses, faces distorted, swollen. You described the rivers of blood. You wrote the words, how no imagination, no matter how daring, could possibly conceive anything we've seen or lived through. No language has been created to describe the enormity of the Holocaust. You were the one who penned the words, the yells of the women, the weeping of the children, their cries for despair and mercy, ring in my ears till this very day. And yet, somehow, you emerged, unscathed by these experiences. One would have expected somebody to be emotionally, psychologically scarred, to wallow in self-pity, but Zaidi, you devoted your entire essence, your entire life, to bring comfort, to bring solace, to bring chizuk, to zekenim, zekenois, almonois, yisoimim, choyle hanefesh. Zaidi was the chief chaplain of the state of Pennsylvania, and in that capacity he would spend his days traveling from one institution to the next, from one umlal to the next, breathing life. How many thousands of cholim did you encourage in your lifetime? How many of these people lived years, decades longer because every day you and Bubi would wheel them into shul, put talis on them, put tefillin on them, bring them to meals? How did you do this? Zaidi, what were you made out of? to live 105 productive years, vibrant years. Zaidi, no language has ever been created to capture the greatness of your lifetime. Bama harachta yamim. How did you do this? Tzadik be'emunasa yichya. Your emunah, the Ribbon Shalom was your best friend. The Ribbon Shalom was a tangible reality to you. Zaidi was once interviewed after the war, and he was asked, Rabbi Glatstein, you're the eyewitness of the atrocities to your people. You saw your family massacred, your nation butchered. Did you at any point in time lose faith in the promises of the Torah? Did you at any point in time lose faith in your God? And Zaidi said, did I lose faith? Sure, I lost faith. I lost faith in man. How could a civilized society like Germany shed their conscience and butcher an innocent people? How could England, the United States, Roosevelt, who knew where Auschwitz was and bombed the perimeter, how could they ignore what was happening? So yes, I lost faith in man, but never for a moment did I lose faith in my God. My faith in the Ribbon Shalom only became stronger. Who can fathom the soaring faith of this tzaddik? Who can imagine the majesty of this neshama? Anyone who saw Rabbi Glatstein immediately understood what it meant. Elokai, neshama, shenasata bi tahirahi. Zaidi, today there's a great simcha in Shamayim. It's a big Yom Tov today in the Shamayim. There's a Kabbalas Panim like there never was. Beroisham, David HaMelech. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Va'ani Sefila, and I am prayer. What does that mean? What did David mean in I am prayer? Could we begin to explain what those words mean? But anyone who knew Zaidi didn't have to explain what those words mean. They understood intuitively. Zaidi, you taught us what it meant. Va'ani tefillah. You personified tefillah. You lived tefillah. One time I had a zechus to go to Eretz Yisrael. Zaidi and Bubi took us to Eretz Yisrael. And Zaidi was saying Tehillim on the plane the entire flight. And he turns to me and says, Dani, see this pasuk? This is my life. Ki chilatzta nafshi mimaves. Es eini min dima, es ragli midechi, es halich lefnei Hashem be'artzois hachayim. The Ribbon Shalom saved my soul from Maves, and now I have the great privilege to walk before the Ribbon Shalom in Eretz Yisrael. How many hundreds and thousands of times did Zaidi complete Sefer Tehillim b'devekus atzuma shelohaya me'olam? So David HaMelech is coming to be Mekabel upon him. The Malbim. How attached you were to the Malbim. Did a day go by? Did a conversation go by that Zaidi didn't mention the Malbim? All of Zaidi's Malbims on Mishlei, on Eoiv, on Yeshaya are annotated, notated with chidushim and notes. Zaidi's Mishlei, he has chidushim of how to counsel people al-pi psychology based on the Malbim on Mishlei. And Zaidi's favorite was Shir Hashirim. Zaidi said every year from the Ger Rebbe, that Shlomo HaMelech said the first parak of Tehillim and his soul ascended the first rung of heaven and then he descended. And then he said the second parak of Shir HaShirim and then Shlomo HaMelech came down. Until Shlomo said the seventh and final parak of Shir HaShirim and his neshama went up to the Kisei HaKavod. Zaidi, you too, after Klal Yisrael completed Shir HaShirim the night of the Seder, your Heilige Neshama also ascended to the Kisei HaKavod in the seventh and final parak of Shir HaShirim. On one occasion, we went to Pittsburgh. We visited Zaidi and Bobby about 5 years ago. And Zaidi comes, he sees walking into the room, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And he was so overcome with emotion, he had a flashback to his first day in Auschwitz. And Zaidi said that when he came to Auschwitz, he heard the Zakanim were crying, "Who's going to say Kaddish for us? Who's going to say Kaddish for us?" And Zaidi said, I thought to myself, who's going to say Kaddish for me? I'm not even married. I don't have children. And now, Doiros, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. For 75 years, Zaidi said Kaddish for the 6 million Shachris, Mincha, and Marav. He didn't miss one Kaddish. In the Shamayim now, there's a Kabbalas Panim, there's a Yom Tiv, there's a Simcha in the Shamayim, and all 6 million Kadoshim are greeting Harav Mordechai Leib Glatstein, and they're saying, Yasher Kaichacha. And as it was mentioned, Zaidi built yeshivas in the DP camps, mikvahs, Beis Yaakovs. He distributed Sfarim, Sifrei Torah, mezuzos. But in his most sacred and important task, as the head of the religious department of the Joint Distribution Committee, Zaidi took on the role of finding relatives of all the survivors, otherwise they couldn't come to America or Eretz Yisrael. And he did not leave Europe until every last survivor was able to either come to the United States of America or come to Eretz Yisrael and rebuild their lives. The renaissance of Torah we see today in America, in Eretz Yisrael, Zaidi had so much nachas from because he understood these were his peiros. And then there's a great Kabbalas Panim. Bobby is coming out to greet Zaidi. Was there ever in the history of the world such a kiddushin, such a marriage like Zaidi and Bobby? Kisamechacha yitzircha began eden mikadem. I don't know what Olam Haba smells like, but if you went to Zaidi and Bobby's house in Pittsburgh, you would smell the reach of Gan Eden. I want to take the occasion to thank my parents, my dear mother. Where is Zaidi going to go after the Shiva? Mommy said Zaidi's coming straight from the last day of Shiva in the morning. Put him in the car, put him on the plane, tell him you're packing a few things. He's just coming for a visit and never turning around. There was never a question. There was never a doubt. That was Mommy's decision. And she was zoicha to bring the Oren HaKodesh and transform the Ba'is into the Beis HaMikdash. We also are eternally indebted to Perry, who's part of the Mishpacha. If you need to know some good Sachet Nigunim, just ask Perry. Perry will share all the family secrets, and the Creator should bless Perry with good health and happiness for his dedicated service. As was mentioned, everyone talks about Mashiach. Zaidi lived Mashiach. For Zaidi, Mashiach was like making an order, and Amazon says it's coming today or tomorrow, 50-50. That's how Zaidi waited for Mashiach. It was a reality. It's here. It's coming. Tzion hi, doiresh ein la, meklal deboi drisha. You have to be doiresh tzion. Ask Reb Chaim Kanievsky, how are you doiresh tzion? You have to be toiveya. Zaidi was toiveya, the Mashiach. He was metzape legeula more than anybody I know. But Zaidi says we're going to take it to the next level. B'nisan nigalu, v'nisan asidan ligael. Says the Medrash Tanchuma, b'tesvav b'nisan nigalu, u'b'tesvav b'nisan asidan ligael. So Zaidi says, I'm going to go straight up to the Kisei HaKavod on Tesvav Nisan. And I'm not going to rest, and I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to be toiveya. During the heat of Corona, we said, Zaidi, be mispalel for the disease to end. And Zaidi said, no. I'm going to be mispalel for the geula. When the geula comes, we don't have to be mispalel for the disease to end. Zaidi is sitting by the Kisei HaKavod. He's the guarantor. He's the Arev. He says, Ribono Shel Olam. B'tesvav b'nisan nigalu. U'b'tesvav b'nisan asidan ligoel. And now he will fulfill the full meaning of Ki chilatzta nafshi mimaves es eini medima es ragli midechi. To be laid to rest on the yard-side of his Heilige Rebbe, Reb Menachem Zemba, who he was together with on Pesach 78 years ago. On Cholamoy Pesach, on the day he will be interred on Har HaZeisim, Zaidi will be reunited with his Heilige Rebbes, with Bubi, with all the Kedoshim. Yizichroi Baruch, Hinishmasai Tzrura B'tzar HaChayim, Bila Mavas Lanetzach, U'malcha Hashem Leikim, Dima Me'al Kol Panim.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.